Hello and welcome to India Reads. We are reading The Story of My Experiments with Truth by M.K. Gandhi, and we are in the midst of Gandhi explaining about the Zulu rebellion. Let's start with section 25. Heart searchings. The Zulu rebellion was full of new experiences and gave me much food for thought. The Boer War had not brought home to me the horrors of war with anything like the vividness that the rebellion did. This was no war but a manhunt, not not only in my opinion, but also in that of many Englishmen with whom I had an occasion to talk. To hear every morning reports of the soldiers' rifles exploding like crackers in innocent hamlets, and to live in the midst of them was a trial. But I swallowed the bitter draught, especially as the work of the corps consisted only in nursing the wounded Zulus. I could see that, but for us, the Zulus would have been uncared for. This work, therefore, eased my conscience. There was much else to set one thinking. Uh, it was sparsely populated part of the country, few and far between hills and dales were scattered kraals of simple and so-called uncivilized Zulus. Marching with and without the wounded through these solemn solitudes, I fell into deep thought. I pondered over Brahmacharya and its implications, and my convictions took deep root. I discussed it with my co-workers. I had not realized how indispensable it was for self-realization. But I clearly saw that one aspiring to serve humanity with his whole soul could not do without it. It was borne upon me that I should have more and more occasions for service of the kind I was rendering, and that I should find myself unequal to my task if I were engaged in the pleasures of family life and in the propagation and rearing of children. In a word, I could live both after the flesh and spirit. And on present occasion, for instance, I should not have been able to throw myself into the fray had my wife been expecting a baby. Without the observance of Brahmacharya, service of the family would be inconsistent in service with the service of the community. With Brahmacharya, they would be perfectly consistent. So thinking, I became somewhat impatient to take a final vow. The prospect of the vow brought a certain kind of exaltation. Imagination also found free play and opened out limitless vistas of service. Whilst I was thus in the midst of strenuous physical and mental work, a report came to the effect that the work of suppressing the rebellion was nearly over and we should soon be discharged. A day or two after this, our discharge came, and in a few days we got back to our homes. After a short while, I got a letter from the governor specially thanking the ambulance corps for its services. On my arrival at Phoenix, I eagerly broached the subject of Brahmacharya with Shaganlal, Maganlal, West, and others. They liked the idea and accepted the necessity of taking the vow. They also represented the difficulties of the task. Some of them some of them said themselves bravely to observe it, and some I know succeeded also. I too took the plunge. The vow to observe Brahmacharya for life. I must confess that I had not then fully realized the magnitude and immensity of the task I undertook. The difficulties are even today staring at my face. The importance of the vow is being more and more borne in upon me. Life without Brahmacharya appears to me as to be insipid and animal-like. The brute by nature knows no self-restraint. Man is man because he is capable of, and only in so far as he exercises self-restraint. What formerly appealed to me to be extravagant praise of Brahmacharya in our religious books seem now increasing clearness every day to be absolutely proper and founded on experience. I saw that Brahmacharya, which is so full of wonderful potency, is by no means an easy affair, and certainly not a matter of the body. It begins with bodily restraint but does not end there. The perfection of it precludes even an impure thought. A true brahmachari will not even dream of satisfying the fleshy appetite until he is in that condition. He has great deal of ground to cover. For me, the observance of even bodily brahmacharya has been full of difficulties. Today I must say that I feel myself fairly safe, but I had yet to achieve complete mastery over thought, which is so essential. Not only not that the will or effort is lacking, but it is yet a problem to me where from undesirable thoughts spring their insidious invasions. I have no doubt that there is a key to lock out undesirable thoughts, but everyone has to find it out for himself. Saints and seers have left their experiences for us, but they've given us no infallible and universal prescription. For perfection or freedom from error comes only from grace, and so seekers after God have left us mantras such as Ramayana, hallowed by their own austerities and charged with their purity. Without an unreserved surrender to His grace, complete mastery over thought is impossible. This is the teaching of every great book of religion, and I am realizing the truth of it every moment of my striving after that perfect Brahmacharya. But part of the history of that striving and struggle will be told in chapters to follow. I shall conclude this chapter with an indication of how I set about the task. In the first flush of enthusiasm, I found the observance quite easy. The very first change I made in the mode of life was to stop sharing the same bed with my wife or seeking privacy with her. Thus, Brahmacharya, which I had been observing willy nilly since 1900, was sealed in the vow in the middle of 1906. The birth of Satyagraha. Events were so shaping themselves in Johannesburg as to make this self-purification on my part preliminary, as if it were to Satyagraha. I can now see that all principal events of my life, culminating in the vow of Brahmacharya, were secretly preparing me for it. The principle called Satyagraha came into being before that name was invented. Indeed, when it was born, I could not say what it was. In Gujarati, we also use the English phrase passive resistance to describe it. But in a meeting of Europeans, I found the term passive resistance was too narrowly construed, that it was supposed to be a weapon of the weak, and that it could be characterized by hatred, and that it could finally manifest itself as violence. I had to demur all these statements and explain the real nature of the Indian movement. It was clear that a new word must be coined by the Indians to designate their struggle. But it could not for the life of me I could not for the life of me find a new name, and therefore offered a nominal price through Indian opinion to the reader who could make the best suggestion on the subject. As a result, Maganlal Gandhi coined the word Sadagraha, Sat, which is truth, Agraha, firmness, and won the prize. But in order to make it clearer, I changed the word to Satyagraha, which has become currently in Gujarati as a designation for the struggle. The history of the struggle is, for all practical purposes, a history of the remainder of my life in South Africa, and especially of my experiments with truth in the subcontinent. I wrote a major portion of this history in Yerwada Jail and finished it after I was released. It was published in Navjeevan and subsequently issued in a book form. Sergeant Valji Govindji Desai had been translating it into English for current thought, but I am now arranging to have the English translation published in book form at an early date, so that those who may be able to familiarize themselves with my most important experiments in South Africa, I would recommend a perusal of my history of Satyagraha in South Africa to such readers as have not seen it already. I will not repeat what I have put down there, but in the next few chapters I will deal only with a few personal incidents of my life. I am sorry, I have jumped ahead. Yeah. And when I have done with these, I will at once proceed to give the reader some idea of my experiments in India. Therefore, anyone who wishes to consider these experiments in their strict chronological order will now do well to keep the history of Satyagraha in South Africa before him. More experiments in dietetics. I was anxious to observe Satyagraha in thought, word, and deed, and equally anxious to devote maximum of time to the Satyagraha struggle and fit myself for it by cultivating purity. I was therefore led to make further changes and to impose greater restraints upon myself in the matter of food. The motive for previous changes had been largely hygienic, but the new experiments were made from a religious standpoint. Fasting and restriction in diet now played an important role in my life. Passion in man is generally coexistent with a hankering after pleasures of the palate. And so it was with me. I have encountered many difficulties in trying to control passion as well as taste, and I cannot claim even now to have brought them under complete subjection. I have considered myself to be a heavy eater. What friends thought to be my restraint had never appeared to me in that light. And if I have failed to develop restraint to that extent that I should have descended lower than the beasts and met my doom long ago. However, as I had adequately realized my shortcomings, I made great efforts to get rid of them. And thanks to this endeavor, I have all these years pulled with my body and put in with my share of work. Being conscious of my weaknesses and unexpectedly coming in contact with congenial company, I began to take an exclusive fruit diet or to fast on Ekadasi day and to observe Janmashtami and similar holidays. I began with the fruit diet, But from the standpoint of restraint, I did not find much to choose between a fruit diet and a diet of food grains. I observed that the same indulgence of taste was possible with the former as with the latter, and even more when one got accustomed to it. I therefore came to attach greater importance to fasting or having only one meal a day on holidays. If there was some occasion for penance or the like, I gladly utilized it for the purpose of fasting. But I also saw that the body now being drained more effectively, the food yielded greater relish and appetite grew keener. It dawned upon me that fasting could be made as powerful a weapon of indulgence as of restraint. Many similar later experiences of mine, as well as those of others, can be adduced as evidence of this startling fact. I wanted to improve and train my body, but as my chief object now was to achieve restraint and a conquest of the palate, I selected first one food and then another, and at the same time restricted the amount. But the relish was after me, as it were. If as I gave up one thing and took another, the later afforded me a fresher and greater relish than its predecessor. In making these experiments, I had several companions. The chief among them was Herman Kallenbach. I had already written about this friend in the history of Satyagraha in South Africa and will not go over the same ground here. Mr. Kallenbach was always with me, whether in fasting or in dietetic changes. I lived with him at his own place when the Satyagraha struggle was at height. We discussed our changes in food and derived more pleasure from the new diet than from the old. Talk of this nature sounded quite pleasant in those days and did not strike me as at all improper. Experience has taught me, however, that it was wrong to have dwelt upon the relish of food. One should not, in order to please the palate, but just to keep the body going. When each organ of the sense subverses the body and through the body soul, its special relish disappears, and then only does it begin to function in a way that nature intended it to do. Any number of experiments is too small and no sacrifice is too great for attaining the symphony with nature. But unfortunately, the current is nowadays flowing strongly in the opposite direction. We are not ashamed to sacrifice a multitude of lives in decorating a perishable body and trying to prolong its existence for a few fleeting moments, with the result that we kill ourselves both body and soul. In trying to cure one old disease, we give rise to 100 new ones. In trying to enjoy the pleasures of the sense, we lose in the end even our capacity for enjoyment. All this passing before our own eyes, and yet we are none so blind as those who will not see. Having thus set forward the object and the train of ideas which led to them, I now propose to describe the dietetic experiments at some length. Kastubai's courage. Thrice in her life, my wife narrowly escaped death through serious illnesses. The cures were due to household remedies. At the time of her first attack, Satyagraha was going on or was about to commence. She had frequent hemorrhage. A medical friend advised a surgical operation to which she agreed after some hesitation. She was extremely emaciated and the doctor had to perform the operation without chloroform. It was successful, but she had to suffer much pain. She, however, went through it with wonderful bravery. The doctor and his wife who nursed her were all attention. This was in Durban. The doctor gave me leave to go to Johannesburg and told me not to have anxiety about the patient. In a few days, however, I received a letter to the effect that Kastubai was too weak to sit up in bed and had once become unconscious. The doctor knew that he might not, without my consent, give her wines or meat. So he telephoned to me at Johannesburg for permission to give her beef tea. I replied that I could not grant the permission, but that if she was in an condition to express her wish in the matter, and she might be consulted and she was free to do as she liked. But, said the doctor, I refuse to consult the patient's wishes in the matter. You must come yourself. If you do not leave me free to prescribe whatever diet I like, I will not hold myself responsible for your wife's life. I took the train for Durban the same day and met the doctor, who quietly broke the news to me. I had already given Mrs. Gandhi beef tea when I telephoned to you. Now, doctor, I call this fraud, said I. No question of fraud in prescribing medicine or diet for a patient. In fact, we doctors consider it a virtue to deceive patients or their relatives, if thereby we can save our patients, said the doctor with determination. I was deeply pained but kept cool. The doctor was a good man and a personal friend. He and his wife had laid me under a debt of gratitude, but I was not prepared to put up with his medical morals. Doctor, tell me, what do you propose to do now? I would never allow my wife to be given meat or beef, even if the denial meant her death, unless, of course, she desired to take it. You're welcome to your philosophy, I tell you that, so long as you keep your wife under my treatment. I must have the option to give her anything I wish. If you do not like this, I must regretfully ask you to remove her. I can't see her die under my roof. So you mean to say that I must remove her at once? Whenever did I ask you to remove her? I only want to be left entirely free. If you do so, my wife and I will do all that is possible for her, and you may go back without the least anxiety on her score. But if you will not understand this simple thing, you must compel me to ask you to remove your wife from my place. I think one of my sons was with me. He entirely agreed with me and said that his mother should not be given beef tea. I spoke to Kastubai herself. She was really too weak to be consulted in this matter, but I thought it my painful duty to do so. I told her what had passed between the doctor and myself. She gave an absolute reply. I will not take beef tea. It is a rare thing in the world to be born as a human being, and I would rather die in your arms than pollute my body with such abominations. I pleaded with her. I told her that she was not bound to follow me. I cited to her the instances of Hindu friends and acquaintances who had no scruples about taking meat or wine as medicine, but she was adamant. No, she said. Pray remove me at once. I was delighted. Not with some agitation, I decided to take her away. I informed the doctor of her resolve. He exclaimed in a rage, "What a callous man you are! You should have been ashamed to broach the subject to her in her present condition. I tell you, your wife is not in a fit state to be removed. She cannot stand the least little hustling. I shouldn't be surprised if she were to die on the way. But if you must persist, you are free to do so. If you will not give her the beef tea, I will not take the risk of keeping her under my roof even for a single day." So we decided to leave the place at once. It was drizzling and the station was at some distance. We had to take the train from Durban to Phoenix, whence our settlement was reached by a road of 2.5 miles. I was undoubtedly taking a great risk, but I trusted in God and proceeded with my task. I sent a messenger to Phoenix in advance with a message to West to receive us at the station with a hammock, a bottle of hot milk and one of hot water, and 6 men to carry Kastubai in the hammock. I got a rickshaw to enable me to take her by the next available train, put her into that dangerous situation, and marched away. Kastubai needed no cheering up. On the contrary, she comforted me, saying, "Nothing will happen to me, don't worry." She was merely skin and bone. She had no nourishment for days. The station platform was very large and the rickshaw could not be taken inside. One had to walk some distance before one could reach the train. So I carried her in my arms and put her in the compartment. From Phoenix, we carried her in the hammock, and there she slowly picked up the strength under hydropathic treatment. In 2 or 3 days of our arrival in Phoenix, a Swami came to our place. He had heard of the resolute way in which we had rejected the doctor's advice, and he had, out of sympathy, came to plead with us. My second and third sons, Manilal and Ramdas, were, so far as I can recollect, present when the Swami came. He held forth on the religious harmlessness of taking meat, citing authorities from Manu. I did not like his carrying on this disputation in the presence of my wife, but I suffered him to do so out of courtesy. I knew the verses from Manu Smriti. I did not need them for my conviction. I also knew that there was a school which regarded these verses as interpolation, even if they were not. I held my views on vegetarianism independently of religious texts, and Kastubai's faith was unshakable. To her, the scriptural texts were a sealed book, but the traditional religion of the forefathers was enough for her. The children swore by a father's creed, and so they made light of the Swami's discourse. But Kastuba put an end to the dialogue at once. "Swamiji," she said, "whatever you may say, I do not want to recover by means of green beef tea. Please do not worry about me anymore. You may discuss the thing with my husband and children if you like, but my mind is made up." Domestic Satyagraha. My first experience in jail life was in 1908. I saw some of the regulations that the prisoners had to observe, where such as should voluntarily be observed by a Brahmacharya, that is, one desiring to practice self-restraint. Such, for instance, was the regulation requiring the last meal to be finished before sunset. Neither the Indian nor the African prisoners were allowed tea or coffee. They could add salt to their cooked food if they wished, but they might not have anything for the mere satisfaction of the palate. When I asked the jail medical officer to give us curry powder and let us add salt to the food whilst it was cooking, he said, "You are not here to satisfying your palate. From the point of view of health, curry powder is not necessary and it makes no difference whether you add salt during or after cooking. Ultimately, these restrictions were modified, but not without much difficulty. But both were wholesome rules of self-restraint. Inhibitions imposed without without really succeed, but when they are self-imposed, they have a decidedly salutary effect. So immediately after release from jail, I imposed on myself two rules. As far as then possible, I stopped taking tea and finished my last meal before sunset. Both these now require no effort in my observance. There came, however, an occasion which compelled me to give up salt altogether, and this restriction I continued for an unbroken period of 10 years. I have read in some books on vegetarianism that salt was not a necessary article of diet for man. On the contrary, a saltless diet was better for health. I had decided that a brahmachari benefited from by a saltless diet. I had read and realized that the weak bodied should avoid pulses. I was very fond of them. Now it happened that Kastubai, who had a brief respite after her operation, had now again began getting hemorrhage, and the malady began seemed to be obstinate. Hydropathic treatment by itself did not answer. She had not much faith in my remedies, though she did not resist them. She certainly did not ask for outside help. So when all my remedies had failed, I entreated her to give up salt and pulses. She would not agree, however much I pleaded with her, supporting myself with authorities. At last she challenged me, saying that even if I could not give up these articles, that even I could not give up these articles if I were advised to do so. I was pained and equally delighted that I got an opportunity to shower my love on her. I said to her, "You're mistaken. If I was ailing and the doctor advised me to give up these or any articles, I would unhesitatingly do so. But there, without any medical advice, I will give up salt and pulses for 1 year, whether you do it or not." She was rudely shocked and exclaimed in deep sorrow, "Pray forgive me. Knowing you, I shouldn't have prompted you. I promised to abstain from these things, but for heaven's sake, take back your vow. This is too hard on me. It is very good for you to forego these articles. I have not the slightest doubt that you will be all the better without them. As for me, I cannot retract a vow seriously taken, and it is sure to benefit me, for all restraint, whatever prompts it, is wholesome for men. You will therefore leave me alone. It will be a test for me and a moral support for you in carrying out your resolve." So she gave me up. "You're too obstinate now. You listen to one," she said, and sought relief in her tears. I would like to count this incident as an instance of satyagraha, and it is one of the sweetest recollections of my life. After this, Kasturbai began to pick up quickly, whether as a result of the saltless and pulseless diet or of any other consequent changes in her food, whether as a result of my strict vigilance in exacting observance of other rules of life, or as an effect of a mental exhilaration produced by the incident, and if so, to what extent I cannot say, but she rallied quickly, hemorrhage completely stopped, and I added somewhat to my reputation as a quack. As for me, I was all the better for the new denials. I never prayed for the things I left, and the years sped away, and I found the senses to be more subdued than ever. The experiment stimulated the inclination for self-restraint, and I continued the abstention from the articles until long after I returned to India, but only when I happened to take both the articles whilst I was in London in 1914. Once I happened to take this, but of that occasion, and as to how I resumed both, I shall speak at a later chapter. I have tried the experiment of a saltless pulseless diet on many of the co-workers, and with good results in South Africa. Medically, there might be two opinions as to the value of this diet, but morally, I have no doubt that self-denial is good for the soul. The diet of the man or self-restraint must be different from that of a man of pleasure, just as their ways of life will be different. Aspirants after Brahmacharya often defeat their own end by adopting courses suited to a life of pleasure. Okay, I'm going to take a break here. I'm going to keep this this chapter very short, this recording very short rather, because I'm not feeling fit and fine and active. What do we have to unpack from the reading today? There are two aspects here. One is Gandhi's belief in his dietary experiments, and his and the implication of that on Kasturba. These are two important aspects that I want to cover. One is Gandhi had a firm belief in in self-restraint. It started not just from food, but it started from his thoughts of Brahmacharya. He was spending a lot of time in the Zulu rebellion and Boer War, and these were times that he would spend alone with himself. They were part of the ambulance corps, and there was not much to do but continue to wait throughout to get some wounded Zulus to whom they could render their medical treatment. That gave a lot of time to Gandhi to ponder and think a lot. He thought a lot about Brahmacharya and discussed with his friends there, and also back home in Phoenix when he returned to the settlement. A lot of them supported him. A few said that they would also take the vow of Brahmacharya. One or two ended up doing and following it and continue to follow till the time the book is written. Gandhi also considered it strongly, and in 1906 he took the vow of Brahmacharya. He had already consulted with his wife. Now he had been willy-nilly observing Brahmacharya for the last 4 5 years, but after he took the vow, he was kind of bound to follow it more seriously, and he was answerable to himself on not breaking the vow. As part of his vow, he also started looking at controlling all forms of restraint, and the biggest distraction or the biggest restraint that he wanted to bring was in his palate. He wanted to stop eating a lot of rich food, and he realized that as he kept cutting down some of the food which he felt was good for his health, his ability to relish what is remaining started improving, and this he realized he was enjoying his food better, he was sleeping better, his health was getting better. And then he realized, as he kept discussing with his friends, that the relishing of the food itself should not be something in the back of his mind. So he stopped focusing on that and started using his fasting as a method for improving his health, or for political purposes, as we will see in the later chapters. So this is one aspect that covers most of the reading today. And the second aspect is Kasturba having gotten unwell. Now Gandhi was in Johannesburg, and she was in Durban, and she got quite unwell. The doctor kind of wrote to him saying that Gandhi should come immediately, and he also said that he is taking some decisions on her behalf. When Gandhi came back, doctor told him that he had given her beef tea without her knowing, and Gandhi was very deeply pained about it. He said that if Kasturba had known about it and she had agreed to it, then it would be fine, but to give it to her without her knowing it is not correct. The doctor said that doctors don't think about it like way. The doctors want the best of health for their patients, and they do take such calls. He said that if he or Kasturba did not want it, then they were free to go, but he would not give the beef tea, because for him it was a treatment, and he would not let her die on his watch. Eventually Gandhi thought about it. His sons also contributed to the discussion, and they said that it would be better for a mother to come out of that medical facility and live on their own rather than go through the treatment. The doctor was aghast by their attitude, but Kasturba also said that she would not like to get better if it was at the cost of drinking beef tea. So once they came back home, Gandhi did his own remedies. Now he himself considered his knowledge as inadequate and calls himself a quack, but he tried his home remedies. Kasturba believed in him, and she sincerely followed whatever he asked her to do, and over a period she got a little better. So this is what it is. And I think this is the one of the most important parts of the chapter. There's not much apart from this. Kasturba obviously escaped death quite narrowly because she had a kind of an attack, but her belief in Gandhi, her trust in Gandhi, is kind of what set her apart from other patients. Gandhi had given her a strong diet of not having salt or pulses, which he felt that would improve her health. She challenged him, saying that what kind of diet is this, and what is the point of all this, and would you do it to yourself if you were in that condition? And Gandhi took it as a challenge, and he took a vow not to have both of them for a period of 1 year. Now realized her mistake of challenging him. She said, no, I would follow it, you please don't need to follow. Gandhi said that I've already taken the vow and I'll do it. And Gandhi himself realized that as he kept bringing more and more restraint in his palate, he started relishing the food better because the body was focused, his mind was focused, and he feels all of this is more a question of getting your mind in order rather than the body in order. Uh, as far as fasting is concerned, as far as the concept of Brahmacharya itself, he feels that it's not just the bodily fluids which are acting up, but it is the mind which kind of needs to set in place, and then the body follows. With this, I'm going to end the chapter today. I hope to come back tomorrow, fresh and active, and read the rest of the book. Yeah. I'll see you soon. Take care. Good night.